All right, I see in the comment section you guys are asking for the deck list, so we're going to look at it first before we get into the matches. And the focus of today's video is going to be looking at how Ruby Amethyst has adapted to set 2 and what it might look like in the metagame moving forward. Now, this is not your Ruby Amethyst from set 1. That was a mid to late game control variant. This version focuses on bounce aggro, hence the title of the deck list you see on screen here. And this is a much lower on the curve. We're not playing Elsas and Ursulas, Aladdins, and all the items, etc. We're focused on let's get some small threats out. You can see there we got like the Pascal, the Pinocchio, the Arthur, etc. And then protect them by either bouncing them back to hand or getting additional utilization off the bounce cards by using things like the Merlin Goat or Rabbit to get draws and or extra lore. You can also bounce back like the Pinocchio to protect it so it's not exerted, etc. Or use Shield and or LeFous to ready it up and protect it that way as well. So this deck is actually quite effective, which is interesting to see. And it doesn't lose as hard to Amber Steel, although it still does kind of struggle because as you bounce cards back to your hand to try to replay, if you don't replay them fast enough, you will get them wheeled away. So you still have the same problem against wheel decks as you do in set 1 with Ruby Amethyst in its traditional control form. This version though is faster and it does still do the job of Ruby Amethyst control in basically just putting too much pressure on the board early game instead of late game where decks just can't deal with it because they're just slower to get going. We're utilizing the Minnie Mouse 3 evasive. This is replacing the Goofy evasive essentially. And then we're just utilizing a lot of other cards to just combo off and generate lore with. Each card is also just good in and of itself, so you don't necessarily need to see the combo pieces in order for it to work well, but thankfully a lot of the cards do combo with each other and that helps it be very effective. So let's go ahead and hop into some matches and we can see how the deck actually works. So in this first matchup here, we're going to start off by inking a Merlin Goat because turn 4 is still a long time away and we have both the Goat and the Merlin Rabbit in hand, so one of them is uninkable. You want to just kind of play on curve, so turn 4 will end up dropping the Merlin Rabbit most likely instead of the Goat. That's kind of how we make our choice there. We dropped the 1-drop mini. We can afford to be a little bit more aggressive because again, this is an aggro deck, whereas previously in Ruby Amethyst, you probably didn't drop your like 1-drop Archimedes or Sergeant Tibbs. You were kind of waiting to see what the opponent was on. So we see that our opponent is on Ruby Sapphire, which I'm a huge fan of. I think that color combination is great. But the opponent's deck is obviously a little slow, right? They have taken some time to build up their ink. They're now caught up in terms of ink count because of the 1 jump ahead, but they haven't actually put anything on board to threaten. My guess is, yeah, double 1 jumps ahead, so they're at 6 already, which is nuts. My guess is they might just be gearing up for like a be prepared play, which would wipe my whole board. So putting the Merlin Rabbit on board is really good here because it allows me to draw obviously when I play it. And if they did be prepared on turn, well, not turn 7, but they're on 7 ink by now, I would be able to draw again off the Merlin Rabbit. My cards have already quested for a decent amount, so losing them here isn't the worst, and we're still fairly even on card advantage thanks to the Merlin Rabbit and just, essentially not inking as much as the opponent because their card advantage was essentially converted into ink right off those 1 jumps ahead. Anyways, you can see the utilization here off the Mim cards with the Merlin cards. We got an extra draw off of the Rabbit there, bouncing it back with the Mim Snake, and our board is widening here. We still are under threat of getting a Be Prepared, but again, I'm not too worried about it because I do have 2 Merlin Rabbits to claw back some advantage if that does happen, and I have another Madam Mim to continue to bounce and rush down characters. We draw a second Mim Fox, which is really good. The opponent opts to play wide as well by, or not wide, but widening their board by playing a Mickey, which further ramps them, and a Belle. But this strategy, and why Belle may not be so good for next format, it's just way too slow, right? They need to be prepared if they're playing it. I assume they are. But at this point, why would you be prepared your board if you opted to go wide with the Belle? If anything, you probably should have played Mickey and focused on maybe more damage control so that you can set up a Be Prepared and then play your Belle next. But you're going to see what happens here. The opponent essentially just doesn't have it. And whether you play it or not in this deck, I assume they do. This is one of the problems with Ruby Sapphire and why you need Dinner Bell essentially in this deck or some other form of draw, because you just need to see cards, right? And that's why Ruby Amethyst worked so well last set, because you were able to fish through a lot of draw and get the cards you needed. So at this point, seeing the opponent end up ditching their whole hand, either playing it out or inking, and you can see how slow Dragonfire is now. That's why we don't play it in this build. It's not as impactful as it needs to be, or at least the opponent wasn't playing enough to control the board earlier on to make Dragonfire keep them in the game. So yeah, at this point, we can utilize the Mim Fox to just finish off the Bell here after crashing the Rabbit into it and dealing damage. And then again, we're just putting way too much pressure on board for the opponent to deal with. Even if they drew a Be Prepared off the top, we would draw off Merlin Rabbit, they'd be on 0 cards, we'd be on 4, and then draw for turn for 5. We drop another Rabbit plus whatever we draw, and we're still just pressuring game, right? So it's pretty much GG's. The opponent realizes that, and they scoop it up, and that is the power of the aggro deck. In this version here, or sorry, not version, but this matchup, we ink a Broom, drop a Pascal. Again, a little bit of a risk because Pascal does lose quite heavily to Steel, and this opponent does reveal that they're on Steel. But again, utilizing the Mim cards, we can end up bouncing back this Pascal before it's threatened by a dropped Tinkerbell or the new Beast that pings for 1. Or anything else that might ping for 1 that trades advantageously for them. If they end up firing the cannons are Pascal, that's totally fine. That trades 1 for 1. No problem there. The opponent, for some reason, I don't know what it is with Pixelborn opponents, they always take forever to decide what to do on turns like 2 and 3. They eventually decide on dropping a hook. I guess they drew that for turn, otherwise they probably would have played it turn 1. And now they're deciding on what to ink. I guess their hand must be really good if they don't want to ink anything. There's no way you're playing that many uninkables, right? But yeah, they end up inking Hercules, which is an interesting thing to see, and then just passing back. So at this point now I can quest with the Pascal and drop the evasive mini to make my Pascal also evasive. But the risk here is that if they have a smash, they could ink something, smash the mini, and then crash the hook into the Pascal, wiping out my whole board. And that was one of the things that Goofy was able to survive. It could survive a smash, whereas the Mini and the Pongo cannot. But I just think, Mini on curve at a 3-drop instead of a 5-drop for the Goofy is just very, very beneficial. So the opponent reveals here the Mouse Armor, which is a decent card because it's going to really protect their hook. But we're going to go ahead and drop the Goat here, knowing that we can utilize the Mim Fox next turn if we wanted to bounce back the Pascal, if we thought a Grab Your Swords was coming or a Tinkerbell Shift was coming. Obviously, neither of those are viable right now because the opponent has nothing to sing Grab Your Swords with. They don't have the ink to cast it, and they didn't set up a Tinkerbell play to shift into either. So we're fine dropping the Goat here and gaining the lore. And depending on what the opponent does on this turn, we might just Mim back the Goat and not the Pascal in order to gain additional lore. Or if we wanted the Pascal for ink and it's already done its job, getting us 2, 3, 4, however many lore we want, we can always bounce it back and use it as ink as well. So let's see. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and bounce back the Goat and then use the Mim Fox to take out the hook. Even if they use the 2 Mouse Armors on it, it was still going to get taken out by the Mim Fox. So it's inconsequential that the opponent did not use their Mouse Armors to protect their hook further or give it resist 2. They finally reveal their second color, and it is another Emerald Steel deck. These are very popular. I've already posted 2 videos on this color combination myself. But again, the opponent's taking a long time to think, and then they finally drop the Hans, and I'm like, okay, that can definitely take out my Pascal. But once again, just like the last match, we have really dictated the tempo. I mean, it does help that we're on the play. That does make a huge difference. But it's like, yeah, 14-2 at this point. I draw into a snake off of my friends on the other side, which was drawn off of me playing my Maleficent. So you can just see the synergy and the core of the Amethyst deck, still drawing cards, super powerful, drawing into what I need, playing it, bouncing back to Pascal, using it as ink. It got me, what, like 4 lore this match? Absolutely crazy. Now it's protected from Hans pinging it and destroying it. It's just like, what do you do against this board? You're not playing red, so you don't have a board wipe and Be Prepared. A Grab Your Swords would do some damage here. You don't have 6 ink to go for Tinkerbell just yet. So, like, I'm threatening a lot. At this point, I don't think there's anything the opponent can do. The match is pretty much wrapped up because I still have Merlin Goat. I still have a Maleficent to drop to draw, right? I can challenge with the Maui dropping. I have Shield if I need to use it to protect. The Bell here doesn't really do anything. It's a 3-quester, but they're so far behind, it's not going to make a difference. And I probably could dump my hand and just challenge it if I really wanted to as well. And put the opponent on, you better have something to clear my board with. Otherwise, I'm still going to go for game. The timer ends up coming up on the opponent, and they end up making a decision there. So their Hans does have resist 2. but it's not really too much of a threat. We play Maleficent, draw into another Friends on the other side, and just like that, our advantage just propels up. 5 cards now in hand. We don't even need to overextend here to play into a Grab Your Swords. There's no reason for me to play Mini here, because if the opponent plays a 6th ink, drops a Tinkerbell, pings everything for 1, then sings Grab Your Swords with the bell, my whole board is wiped. So we played a little bit safer here, and we opt to drop the Merlin Rabbit, because if they wipe my board here, I can draw again off the Merlin Rabbit. That's totally fine, and I'm still pressuring game on board, because they can only take out 2 things with their current characters, assuming they don't have another removal in hand like a Fire the Cannons or Smash. My 2 cards that are readied would quest for 2, and then the 3rd thing that survives would quest for game. Or I just play Goat, and that's game anyways. Or I can Goat and then play the Snake to bounce back the Goat, and that's an additional 2 lore. So like, there's so many different win conditions for me right now. In the end, the opponent didn't have anything, and you're just showcasing the power of the deck here. Again, not going to probably be the definitive way to play Ruby Amethyst, but it is an interesting way to see how set 2 introduced a new approach to this color combination, which was definitely not viable in set 1 in my opinion. If you're interested in seeing how a control version of this deck would look with the Elses and everything, let me know. I have posted a video before on this, but it was before the full set was released. But we're about to wrap up this video. Win the game by going wide. If you made it this far in the video, thank you again for watching. Quantum is out.